Should the SEC reconsider finishing the season?
Molly, first let me just explain how bad a day it was yesterday for the SEC. It started off with Sam Pittman, the Arkansas coach, acknowledging that he has COVID. Dan Mullen a couple weeks ago acknowledged the same thing. Then Texas A&M paused. That means they want to take it to make sure they're going to be careful. They have a game this weekend against Tennessee. And then Mississippi State and Auburn got wiped off the board for next week, for this Saturday, postponed until later in the season. And then the big one you mentioned, Alabama and LSU hangs in the balance. So I spoke last night to Commissioner Greg Sankey and asked him a similar question, and he said right now we are going to stay the course. So we've had fairly good luck in terms of games being postponed or canceled. A couple of outbreaks a few weeks ago with Florida, but right now that's the answer. But as everyone here knows, the LSU-Alabama game is always one of the biggest games in college football, and if it doesn't go off, it very likely won't, because LSU has already missed a game because of COVID. Their game against Florida has been pushed to December 12th, which is a weekend the SEC has reserved for makeup games. And you would hate to see that game not be played. However, with the way LSU is playing, it probably won't make much difference. They may get to avoid a loss, because the national champions are spiraling out of control right now with 3 losses already.
Paul, I don't know if you heard about it, but Commissioner Greg Sankey told Paul Finebaum on the Paul Finebaum show that that things are uncomfortable. That, like you talk about that Thanksgiving date and the way things are going, and they may have to kind of recalibrate how they're going to get through this. How do they get through this? Is it like a little SEC tournament and scrap some parts of the season to try to get some kind of playoff or something going before it's too late? How much pressure is on in terms of the time right now?
Well, all along, the commissioner, who was very wise in his approach to the season, remember, he was one of the first ones to say, we can't play Labor Day weekend. We'll start September 26th. While we all know the Pac-12 and the Big Ten just said, we're not playing at all, which they now are, and it turned out to be a mess. So he's been cautious. He's wanted to get to December 19th, which is the SEC championship game, as the threshold of whether the season was a success or not, and ultimately the playoffs, which come 10 days after that and then into January. So I don't think at this point it's going to shut down. But Max, you and I and everyone watching knows the reality of the situation. These numbers get worse by the day. They're rising exponentially. And with students about to get sent home for Thanksgiving, does that help or hurt getting them off the campus? It's hard to say.
Harbaugh's Wolverines are 1-2 this season with 2 consecutive losses to Michigan State and Indiana. Harbaugh has only 1 more year left on his contract. Paul, has Harbaugh been a success or failure at Michigan?
Jim Harbaugh has become a Saturday Night Live parody at Michigan. He has not been a success, unless you like to laugh. And I do. And watching him has been hilarious, because he is not an elite coach anymore. He was when he got there, remember. He was at the 49ers. He took them to a couple of NFC championship games and the Super Bowl, losing to his brother. But even though the overall record is still pretty good there, his matchups against his big rival, Ohio State, everyone in America knows he hasn't beaten them. He's 500 against his in-state rival. And this year, losing to Michigan State and then Indiana. And I realize Indiana's a good program. I'm not here to knock them. But I just think it's spiraled out of control. And, as you said, with another year to go, what credibility does he have if they bring him back? I know they don't want to fire him. He's a favorite son. He was a former quarterback. But it's time. It's time to end this farce. It really is.
What does you think it is, Paul? When he first went, he's going to coach Michigan, I'm thinking to myself, that's actually perfect, because in the NFL he had a lot of success, but he seemed to burn his players out. I thought, at least, watching from afar, after 3 or 4 years, too much intensity. Well, perfect, go to college, because these kids are going to cycle through in that time. Then you got a new crop of kids. You'd think he'd be able to recruit. It's a program that at least thinks of itself as very important. What happened? Did he forget how to coach? What happened to Harbaugh?
I think he's too stubborn, Max. I mean, Nick Saban, to bring him up, if the court will indulge me here, is a defensive-minded coach. He hated the tempo offense. He tried to get the rules changed, and then he decided to hire Lane Kiffin and then start recruiting Tunga Vailoa and others, and he decided, I have to change. I can't compete with the Clemsons, and I can't compete with other schools if I don't. And look at them now. They haven't won every national championship, but he's won quite a few. He's won 6 overall and 5 at Alabama, and he's number 1 in the country right now. Jim Harbaugh just doesn't change. He just keeps beating his head against the wall, thinking that whatever used to work is going to work. And I think ultimately his stubbornness has gotten in the way of his success.
So let me be clear and pin you down, Paul Finebaum, on this particular issue. Are you saying that Jim Harbaugh needs to be gone from Michigan? Are you saying that no college program, no elite college program needs to think about bringing him on board? Or are you saying his days as a head coach, period, on the collegiate or the professional level should be over? Specifically, what are you saying?
Thanks for the question. I think his days at Michigan should be over. They need a change. He needs a change. I don't think there's a major college that would hire him because he does come with baggage now. But I do think, Stephen A., there's a shot, a very narrow shot, but somebody in the NFL, one of these billionaire owners would look at Harbaugh and say, maybe he would work. I mean, certainly if Jerry Jones had hired him last year, things couldn't be any worse. I know I'm preaching to the choir. You know what I would love? Can you imagine Jim Harbaugh in New York
For
the Jets? For the Jets.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.